So this is text 36, 1936. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. We're with Grandfather Bhishma, who is by his own choice about to leave his body, and in the presence of Krishna. And Krishna brought with him the Pandavas, headed by Yudhisthira. He's successfully pacified the heart of Yudhisthira. He's then given instructions in Yudhisthira how to rule as the emperor of the world. He then detects that the sun is moving towards the northern horizon, meaning the auspicious time for yogis to depart, and he's now withdrawing his subtle senses from activities that he's been conducting his life with the whole life, serving, and now he's assimilating or absorbing his mind in thought of Krishna, and he's seeing Krishna with his eyes, and his mind is absorbed in thinking of Krishna. And specifically, the previous few verses, he was seeing that form that Krishna was displaying before him to protect his devotee Arjuna. Although he had promised he wouldn't engage in the battle to protect Arjuna, he was ready to break his promise, carrying the chariot wheel of Arjuna to smash Bhishma. When Arjuna was seemingly polluted by ignorance upon observing the soldiers and commanders before him on the battlefield, the Lord eradicated his ignorance by delivering transcendental knowledge. May his lotus feet always remain the object of my attraction. Purport. The kings and the commanders were to stand in front of the fighting soldiers. That was the system of actual fighting. The kings and commanders were not so-called presidents or ministers of defense as they are today. They would not stay home while the poor soldiers or mercenaries were fighting face to face. This may be the regulation of modern democracy, but when actual monarchy was prevailing, the monarchs were not cowards elected without consideration of qualification. As it is evident from the battlefield of Kurukshetra, all the executive heads of both parties, alike Drona, Bhishma, Arjuna, and Duryodhana, were not sleeping. Semicolon. All of them were actual participants in the fighting, which was selected to be executed at a place far from the civil residential quarters. This means that the innocent citizens were immune from all effects of fighting between the rival royal parties. The citizens had no business in seeing what was going to happen during such fighting. They were to pay 1/4 of their income to the ruler, whether he be Arjuna or Duryodhana. All the commanders of the parties on the battlefield of Kurukshetra were standing face to face, and Arjuna saw them with great compassion and lamented that he was to kill his own kinsmen on the battlefield for the sake of the empire. He was not at all afraid of the giant military phalanx presented by Duryodhana, but as a merciful devotee of the Lord, the renunciation of worldly things was natural for him, and thus he decided not to fight for worldly possessions. But this was due to a poor fund of knowledge, and therefore it is said here that his intelligence became polluted. His intelligence could not be polluted at any time because he was a devotee and constant companion of the Lord, as is clear in the 4th chapter of Bhagavad Gita. Apparently, Arjuna's intelligence became polluted because otherwise there would not have been a chance to deliver the teachings of Bhagavad Gita. For the good of all polluted conditioned souls engaged in material bondage by the conception of false material body. The Bhagavad Gita was delivered to the conditioned souls of the world to deliver them from the wrong conception of identifying with the body with the soul, and to reestablish the soul's eternal relation with the Supreme Lord. Atma Vidya, or transcendental knowledge of himself, was primarily spoken by the Lord for the benefit of all concerned in all parts of the universe. This term Atma Vidya is directly presented by Jiva Goswami in his Bhagavad Sandarbha. It's the Chit Shakti of Krishna's Sarup Shakti, Krishna's own personal potency, is accompanied with these three divisions: Sandini, Samvit, Vadini. Samvit, or Chit, cognizant potency, when extended out from the Lord in contact with his devotees, that's this Atma Vidya. One cannot realize oneself without that potency, or without that potency, one's real capacity for knowledge is covered. And the covering is the material conception. And material conception is removed by, you can say, the spiritual conception, or here specifically, Atma Vidya. Knowledge of the self is revealed. Or it's restored. Or the true Atma Vidya is the relation between the soul and the individuals in the Supreme Soul. It's a nice understanding. It's a very sensible understanding. Because Atma Vidya goes beyond the Brahman conception. In the Brahman conception, there's no characteristics of the Atma. There's no individual Atma. And therefore it's not really Atma Vidya. It's identification with Brahman, but it's not self-realization. When self-realization, it becomes manifest by the Lord's presence, that is, by the presence of the Atma Vidya, then the Lord is realized along with oneself. Very sensible. Or definition by negation. Nice try, but it's incomplete. Largely that's what Brahman conception is. No vishishtas, no attributes, no qualities, no form, no name, no features, no personality, just existing. Sat. Existence. And the knowledge of Bhagavad Gita, the knowledge that Krishna was transmitting to Arjuna in Bhagavad Gita, is beyond that. Knowledge of who he is and what his duty is in relation to Krishna. Therefore, it's transcendental knowledge. And transcendental knowledge does not mean simply knowledge distinguished from illusion. It's not illusion. It's not this. In other words, it's revelation of Krishna. Real transcendental knowledge is revelation of Krishna. So the conclusion of transcendental knowledge is one's relationship with Krishna. And one's relationship with Krishna, when engaged in it, is ecstatic. It leads to ananda. Sat leads to chit, or atmavidya leads to ananda by acting in that relationship. So Bhishma is appreciating, in this verse, he's appreciating the effect. The previous verse was the effect of Krishna's presence on the demons. Their lives were eliminated, reduced, and destroyed just by Krishna looking upon them. It's not like Krishna looked at them and they fell over dead, but the power of Krishna's eyes, the power of Krishna's vision, the power of Krishna had its impact one way on the demons, Duryodhana and company, and those that were following him, and his eyes or his vision or his presence with Arjuna had the opposite effect. His ignorance was dispelled, and he was the covering of forgetfulness was removed. The restoration of his knowledge, his atma vidya, knowing that his true self is in relation to Krishna regardless of the outcome, etc. And he's appreciating how Krishna's presence with Arjuna was like that. His ignorance was eradicated just by Krishna's presence on the battlefield with Arjuna. So may that same Supreme Lord be always in my mind. May I hold his lotus feet in my mind. In my mind. 37. Then comes himself. So there was the demons, then there was Arjuna, then there's himself. Fulfilling my desire and sacrificing his own promise, he got down from the chariot, took up its wheel, and ran towards me hurriedly, just as a lion goes to kill an elephant. He even dropped his outer garment on the way. He's running so fast, charging with the wheel of Arjuna upraised, ready to smash Grandfather Bhishma. The happiness of Dasya Ras in chivalry. Purport: the Battle of Kurukshetra was fought on military principles, but at the same time in a sporting spirit, like a friend's fight with another friend. Duryodhana criticized Bhismadeva, alleging that he was reluctant to kill Arjuna because of paternal affection, which is true. A Kshatriya cannot tolerate insults on the principle of fighting. Bhismadeva therefore promised that the next day he would kill all 5 Pandavas with special weapons made for the purpose. Duryodhana was satisfied, and he kept the arrows with him to be delivered the next day during the fight. By tricks, Arjuna took the arrows from Duryodhana, and Bhismadeva could understand that this was the trick of Lord Krishna. So he took a vow the next day. Krishna would have to take up weapons himself, otherwise his friend Arjuna would die. In the next day's fighting, Bhismadeva fought so violently that both Arjuna and Krishna were in trouble. Arjuna was almost defeated, the situation was so tense that he was about to be killed by Bhismadeva. The very next moment at that time, Lord Krishna wanted to please his devotee Bhishma by keeping Bhishma's promise, which was more important than his own. Seemingly, he broke his own promise. He promised before the beginning of the battle of Kurukshetra that he would remain without weapons and would not use his strength for either of the parties. But to protect Arjuna, he got down from the chariot, took up the wheel of the chariot, and rushed at Bhismadeva in an angry mood. As a lion goes to kill an elephant, he dropped his covering cloth on the way, and out of great anger, he did not know that he had dropped it. Bhismadeva at once gave up his weapons and stood to be killed by Krishna, his beloved Lord. The fighting of the day was thus ended at that very moment, and Arjuna was saved. How it was ended was when the sun sets, the conch shells blow, and that's it. It's like Arti, time for deity worship. Or deity worship is over. The curtain closes. So the battle closed. Very dramatic. Of course, there was no possibility of Arjuna's death because the Lord himself was on the chariot. But because Bhishmadeva wanted to see the Lord take up some weapon to save his friend, the Lord created this situation, making Arjuna's death imminent. He stood before Bhishmadeva to show him that his promise was fulfilled and that he had taken up the wheel. Most of us know. We've heard it so many times, but it's nice to hear it again and again. Bhishma's previous name was Deva Vrata. Vrata means vow. And the name Deva Vrata was given by his mother. You know the story? You do. So Deva Vrata's mother was Ganga.
Oh, yeah.
Yes, you know. Okay. Very involved, as Puranic stories go. She had been cursed by Brahma to take birth on earth because her eyes had connected with the eyes of a man who was lusting after her, and the man was cursed to take birth on earth, and she was cursed to take birth on earth. And so when she was, I just came across this. You know Ramya or Lakshmi Suresh? You know her? So your sister attended her wedding. So this is in Potomac, Maryland. There's a family that the Menons know. And she's from South India. And she was marrying a young man from South India. So the priest conducted the wedding according to South Indian tradition. And during one part of the wedding, the daughter, who is now 27 or something, she's supposed to sit on her father's lap, facing north. Okay, I never saw that one before. But so he's seated facing north, and she's sat on his right lap, and he's supposed to give his daughter in marriage to the young man who's standing in front of both of them. So in this Mahabharata story, Ganga sat on the right lap of one great king, saying, let's get married. And he said, well, you sat on my right lap, my right thigh, and that's for the daughter or the daughter-in-law. So since you sat on my right lap, then I'll accept you as my daughter-in-law, and you'll become married to my son. His son was Santanu. So in a line of kings from the Moon Dynasty, tomorrow morning I'm going to read a whole section from Mahabharata, because it's from the morning's verse tomorrow morning, where Krishna is being appreciated for having appeared to destroy those who were demons of the heavenly realm, had taken birth on earth, and Krishna came to destroy the demons who had taken birth on earth, were enemies of the demigods of the heavenly realm. So there's demons in the heavenly realm, and they appear on earth. So the devotees of the Lord who take birth on earth, two famous dynasties are the Sun Dynasty and the Moon Dynasty. And Santanu appeared in the Moon Dynasty, as did Krishna. So an ancestor of Krishna, Santanu, and the whole dynasty. So Santanu is from that dynasty, and when Santanu was born, Ganga was still around. She didn't age. She didn't become an old-looking lady. She was still youthful, like a demigod, and very attractive features, etc., etc. And when Santanu was in the forest hunting, he came across Ganga, and he was immediately attracted. And he didn't waste any time. He's the king. She's an attractive single woman. He proposed that they should marry. She would become his queen. And she agreed on one condition. You know the condition? If you never do it, you never speak anything against what I do. And that's their marriage contract. He agreed. So the first 7 children were, as soon as they were born, they were thrown into the river. And he didn't say anything, because that was the marriage contract. But there was a prior agreement between the 8 Vasus who were cursed by Vishishta to also take birth on earth because of their offending him, etc. They approached Ganga, if we take birth on earth, can you save us? As soon as we're born, can you return us back to the heavenly realm? So she agreed, she kept her word. The 8th son was Santanu objected. Santanu objected. So she said, you broke the marriage contract. I'm out of here. And she just disappeared. But she came back later, some number of years later, after Deva Vrata was trained in military skill by Parashuram, of all people trained in scriptural knowledge by Vishishta, the same one who had cursed him to take birth on earth. And others are also named by her. Depends on the version of Ramayana that you read. And how did Santanu noticed one day, because I went back and researched this a little bit more, he was by the side of the Ganges River, and he saw that the flow of the Ganges River had almost stopped. The river had become very shallow. So he went upstream to see what was the cause, and there was a young teenager who had used celestial weapons to stop the flow of the Ganges. And he put 2 and 2 together and came up with 4. That's my son. And at that very moment, Ganga came, holding the hand of Devavrata, said, "This is your son. Here's how he's been trained. And my obligation to the Vasu members who have returned has been fulfilled. My obligation to Lord Brahma has been fulfilled. Now I'm going to return to my post in the heavenly realm." And she vanished. So from that time, Devavrata was the constant companion. It says specifically in the Mahabharata, for 3 years, they were in constant company of one another. So a very strong bond of affection naturally had developed between a very, very qualified king in the Chandra dynasty and one of the great Vasus who has taken birth on earth by some divine arrangement for pastime purposes. His name became Bhishma when he took a vow on behalf of his father that his father could marry a fisherman's daughter on the condition that he, Bhishma, would not marry and would not become a king. So with those 2 promises, his father then accepted a second wife. The second wife was Satyavati, the fisherman's daughter. And then the rest of the Mahabharata continues. So he had maintained that vow. His name means great vow. The first one was the vow of a Deva, the Bhishma's terrible vow. It's a nice vow. Don't become a king. Don't get married. It's a nice vow. Bhishma. But for kings, that was one of the curses that was given to him by Vishishta. So you'll go to earth, but you'll have no marriage, you'll have no queen, you'll have no wife your whole life. Kind of a nice benediction. So that was fulfilled. But so when he took this vow that he would kill the 5 Pandavas because he was insulted by Duryodhana, you have affection for Arjuna like a parent, because he had affection for Arjuna like a parent, naturally, because he raised the 5 Pandavas, including one of them, Arjuna, as their father, because their father had deceased. And so it was grandfather that took care of raising, because like our discussion on the car ride over here, it's the grandfather that cared for them like a father. And he taught them everything, because he knew everything, from scripture, from military science, everything. He passed on everything to his children, his grandchildren, or his children. So naturally there was parental affection. He was on the side of the Kurus, or Duryodhana, for different reasons. Supposedly for dharmic reasons. One of those dharmic reasons was he was being maintained by the royal family, and so he's now obliged to engage in battle on behalf of those who have maintained him. It would be adharmic to go against, in battle, to go against those who had maintained him. kind of like party spirit, but it's a dharmic principle. So he put that dharmic principle above paradharma. That's not right. We don't do that. But that was also part of Krishna's arrangement. Paradharma meaning you act for the pleasure of Krishna. You subordinate all other dharmic principles, all other considerations to that one principle. Sarva dharmam parityaja mamekam sharanam braja. It's a very, very interesting personality profile, is Grandfather Bhishma. Lots of different things going on in different directions and layers and complexities and vows but what rules from the Vaishnava point of view, what rules everything is rasa, or the particular relationship one has and the relish or mellow or taste that one has in that relationship, and Bhismadeva is way up there. Although twice he who doesn't break his vow had a vow that he would kill the fine Pandavas, and the next one was he would kill Arjuna unless Krishna broke his vow. And so supersede the glory that Bhismadeva wanted to see. I mean, there's subtleties. Bhismadeva wanted to see Krishna break his vow. His vow was, I wouldn't take a weapon. So to fulfill Bhishma's wish, to fulfill his devotee's desire, we just read, Krishna created the situation. Krishna created the situation. Why? To fulfill the desire of his devotee. That's the rasa part. That everything is ruled by rasa. And the especially the desire of the devotee. Especially very exalted devotees like Bhishma. Krishna is going to fulfill his desire. Although somebody might look at it differently. From the vantage point of a follower of Lord Chaitanya, everything, or Rupa Goswami is a follower of Lord Chaitanya, the position that somebody is in has everything to do with their rasa. So Bhismadeva is appreciating the rasa that Arjuna has with Krishna. Isn't that envious? He is appreciating the rasa that Arjuna has with Krishna. And our commentators here, Srila Prabhupada, is appreciating the relationship that Bhishma has with Krishna. And Krishna made so many arrangements to fulfill the desires of Grandfather Bhishma. And perhaps most outstanding is Krishna wanted to be present before the eyes of Grandfather Bhishma at the time of his passing, because that was his desire. He wanted, if anyone had any doubt about the greatness of Grandfather Bhishma, Krishna wanted to show he's even greater than me. Meaning, when Yudhishthira was lamenting, Krishna tried to pacify, even Krishna couldn't pacify. But Bhishmadeva could. So he's greater than me. No, he's not greater than Krishna, but Krishna wanted to create a situation where it looked like he's greater than Krishna even. And Krishna's good at pacifying people, but he was unable. Yudhishthira was still despondent over the mass massacre of so many people. Just yesterday evening, there was a 2-hour class with the Chinese devotees from chapter 71 of Canto 10, where Krishna goes to Indraprastha to assist Yudhishthira in performing the Rajasuya Yajna. And the description of when Krishna went from Dwaraka to Indraprastha, it wasn't like, get on a plane or, get on a train, or it was a big deal. Every one of the 16,000 queens, 16,108 queens, had a palanquin carriers, their 10 sons, their maidservants, a whole entourage, what to speak of the cooks and everybody else and everything else, and the horses, and the camels, and the chariots, and, a whole big shebang. And off they went. And then the reception once they reached Indraprastha, very detailed description, very, very detailed, majestic, opulent situation. It says that the kingdom of Yudhishthira, during Vedic times, kingdoms were very opulent, but more opulent than all the other opulent kingdoms was Yudhishthira because of his being so dear to Krishna. And when he met with Krishna, he lost it. He was so overwhelmed that he forgot what to do. Everything stands on ceremony, and he forgot what to do. He just lost it. And so it's the intimacy amongst the thousands and hundreds of thousands of people that received Krishna in grand pomp and splendor. The main purpose was Yudhishthira. And Yudhishthira was so overwhelmed, he didn't know where, he lost contact with this world. It says specifically, he didn't know that he was in this world, just by being in the presence of Krishna. So there's the demons that were in the presence of Krishna, Arjuna in the presence of Krishna, and there's Yudhishthira in the presence of Krishna. And even Krishna wasn't able to pacify Yudhishthira, but Bhismadeva was. So he's greater than me. So there should be no doubt about the character and the integrity and the superlative position of Grandfather Bhishma. In case somebody had some doubt, the doubt should be taken away by Krishna's arrangement. And all the other preceding details are also by Krishna's arrangement. And last thing, in Naperville, in the morning class, we've been reading Canto 2, Chapter 3, Pure Devotional Service, Change of Heart. And there's a section, verses 14, 15, where Shukadeva Goswami is now being asked by Maharaj Parikshit, what else did he say? What did Shukadeva Goswami say to Maharaj Parikshit next? What did Maharaj Parikshit inquire next? Suta Goswami is being asked. And the statement is made specifically, such topics are to be heard, even they're indirect, because the direct is to hear about Lord Hari and to hear about the relationship of those who are in relationship with Lord Hari. It's indirect and as good. It leads to Hari. It is Harikatha because it leads to Harikatha because of their relationship with Hari. So all of this, all in these topics of Grandfather Bhishma, Krishna is not absent. Krishna is front and center. And it's a loving reciprocation between Krishna and his devotees. What to speak of, the later cantos of the Bhagavatam when Krishna's in Vrindavan. That's like the best of the best. But to understand properly the best of the best, these earlier cantos are there to make sure we get it right. The best of the best of the best of the best of the best. The superlative nature of Krishna's intimate exchanges with his intimate devotees in Vrindavan. It's very special. And the best devotees from outside of Vrindavan appreciate that. It's going to come up. It was in Queen Kunti's prayers. It's going to come up in Bhishma's prayers too. So let's see if there's some discussion. Krishna, Krishna, yeah. Right behind you, there's a microphone.
Hare Krishna Maharaj, I was wondering if you knew if there was a reason why Krishna made that promise not to pick up weapons in the Kurukshetra battle.
Well, there's external, there's internal. The external is both, well, they're relatives. Balaram did not want, he's a peacemaker, he did not want to fight between the Vrishnis and the Kurus because they're from the same, ultimately the same dynasty. So he went to make peace. He wanted to not be peace, not be a war. So he left because he didn't want war. He didn't want to be part of it. And Krishna followed suit. I don't want to be part of it. But he actually wanted the war. I won't be a partisan. I'm not going to be in favor of this and against that. So someone can take my armies and someone can take. So it's to display the nature of Duryodhana. He wants the armies, not Krishna. And it's the nature of Arjuna. He wants Krishna, not his armies. And then the consequence of wanting something that looks like material or military strength, as opposed to one who wants the strength of relationship with Krishna. So I'll take no arms. I'm not going to be a participant in this battle. I'll remain neutral. But he's not neutral, he's the chariot driver. And he navigated the chariot very expertly. Very expertly. That's a big deal. The chariot driver is a big deal for a warrior. And with Krishna as the chariot driver, why he took the vow to not take arms was the external of being neutral in a conflict between. He already had tried, at least in the role of the peacemaker, give them the store. Just keep a little corner over there, knowing what the answer would be. So he was taking that role, that he's reciprocating in the role of, in the drama of one who's neutral, when in fact he's partial. Just by being on the chariot of Arjuna, there's no way, it said, no way Bhishma could kill him. But it was arranged as if he was about to kill him, so then Krishna had to. So it's all Krishna's arrangement. So why no arms? I'm neutral. It's a conflict between relatives. I'm neutral. Not going to take sides. But then on the deeper is rasa. Because Bhismadeva was on the other side, and then they could be in this chivalry rasa to satisfy the desire of Bhishma, who wanted to satisfy the desires of Krishna. Anything? Yeah?
Maharaj, a few doubts. When you were referring to Atma Vidya and that it goes beyond the Brahman conception, and I've been specifically preparing for Gita Camp in Naperville, and the 26th verse of the 14th chapter says, one who engages in full devotional service, unfailing in all circumstances, at once transcends the modes of material nature and thus comes to the level of Brahman. So that's confusing to me, because full devotional service and you come to the level of Brahman, where apparently, there isn't a conception of Atma Vidya even.
Is the confusion cause and effect or chronological sequence?
The confusion is that engaging in full devotional service leads one to the level of Brahman. That's surprising and disappointing.
That's a what?
That's surprising and
Why?
Because
How can you engage in full devotional service unless you're already there?
but if you engage in full devotional service, you only reach the level of Brahman?
No. No.
Isn't that what the verse says?
No.
Okay.
It's a subset. It's to say that full devotional service is on the platform of Brahman. It's not on the platform of inspired by or touched by or even remotely in contact with the modes. It's beyond the modes. It's this full devotional service is beyond the modes. That's in a generic sense, not in a clinical sense, but in a generic sense, that's the level of Brahman. The devotional service is executed from the platform of Brahman. It's not that devotional service limits one to Brahman. It's a subset. That's it.
Bhishmadev's rasa is chivalry.
No.
Oh, sorry, his secondary rasa is
Yeah.
chivalry. His primary
Yeah.
rasa is dasya.
At least in this case, it's not always his. It's occasional. It's chivalry towards Krishna. It's circumstantial, and then subsides. Primary rasa is dasya, and so the way that these secondary rasas work is they stimulate and enhance the primary rasa, and then they subside. So always before, during, and after, the primary rasa is operating, because sthāyi bhava. And in comes let's say, there's a big wave. And here comes another small wave intersecting the big wave, and the big wave becomes swelled by this other wave that came in contact with it, and then the secondary wave subsides and the main wave keeps going. So it's not always, it's just this particular circumstance.
And we read that Kshatriya code is that you die fighting, you never put down your weapons.
Right.
So why is it that when ultimately Krishna is ready to fight with him and picks up the chariot wheel, that Bhishma, instead of fighting in his chivalrous rasa, drops his weapons?
Oh, it's because he just surrendered. He's in ecstasy. I was doing what I was doing to get this. It's a sign of surrender. It happened in relation to Parashuram and Bhishma. Parashuram dropped his weapons, indicating, I shall no longer fight. And Bhishma came and fell and paid obeisances at Parashuram's feet. The fighting, it's a gesture indicating fight's over. No longer am I going to take up this Kshatriya role. Fight's over. Because he was fighting under Kshatriya principle. I'm your teacher, you're disobeying, so either you obey or you'll fight me. Parshuram. Fight's over. Drop the weapons. Like surrender. Here's the white flag. Another wave. Surrender.
And finally, a comment, Guru Maharaj, hearing you speak for the last 1 week on this pastime, it's really struck me that sometimes Krishna likes to heighten the climax.
Yeah.
to convey a message. So the irony of this drama is just so intense because Bhishma, his name itself means one who stands by his vow. And so much so that he's willing to fight his own spiritual master and an incarnation of the Supreme Lord to defend his vow. That very Bhishma is killed by Krishna breaking his own vow. So, showing that, Krishna is using such an extreme example to demonstrate that above the principle of upholding his vow, he values the protection of his devotee.
Yeah. Yes, exactly. He'll do anything. So we came across this. Where was it? Same as in the vow that Krishna takes to us in Bhagavad Gita 1866, do not fear. Krishna will say that from time to time to different personalities. No need to worry, do not fear. Like the kings, this was this chapter that we were discussing yesterday evening. A messenger came from 20,000 kings who were imprisoned by Jarasandha with the plan to make a human sacrifice of 20,000 kings to Mahabhairava as a human sacrifice to please this form of Lord Shiva. And Krishna said to the messenger, tell the kings, I will come, I will eliminate Jarasandha, and please let them know, do not fear. So Krishna gives his word because these are kings who are surrendered unto him, not just because they were in a hot water, but because they were surrendered unto him, and he protects his devotees. So Krishna has the strength to fulfill his vow, and Krishna keeps his vow, so there's no need to fear. Mahasuchaha. The only thing from our side is just one thing. Mamekam sharanam. That's it. That's it. Now, doesn't mean we become complacent, or the kings don't become, when they regain their kingdom, they become complacent. They carry forward with deep gratitude that Krishna rescued them, and they continue to serve as kings according to the indications of Krishna. They continue to do service. So we also continue. Mamekam sharanam. And there's nothing to fear. This came out so many times that recently, because of Bhakti Vinod Thakur's disappearance day, reading more, again about his life, he was fearless. There was so many risky situations he was in, and he was fearless, and he understood. He was again and again and again protected. Again and again and again protected. Again and again and again protected. He wasn't foolish, but he was fearless. And he knew that he would be protected. And he was protected. So you wanted to say something.
Maharaj, here we see Bhishmadeva took a oath of brahmachari because of his father wanted to get married.
Yeah.
So this verse that tapasya brahmacharyena, one in order to realize God, we have to follow these principles of brahmachari, charity,
Yes.
and it goes on like that.
Yes.
We cannot realize God. So in present Kali Yuga, the holy name is, because we cannot follow all these principles. So it's chanting of the holy name is recommended. So we are brought in a society where we grew up education, where everything is prominent, all these things, unwanted things. That's deep rooted. Like for Krishna consciousness, it's a gradual process. But in all circumstances, how we can overcome all these things and fix ourselves in Krishna consciousness.
Just this morning, I was listening to a recording. Srila Prabhupada was visiting New Vrindavan, 1976. I could recognize a number of the voices, so I went back to read the transcription of the conversation. And the verse that Pradumna was reading, a verse on being very determined, in that verse where the sparrow wants to get her eggs back, and the ocean doesn't pay attention. She takes a vow, I'm going to dry you up. And everyone laughs as she's taking her small beak to dry up the ocean. Word spreads, Garuda comes to, so Garuda orders the ocean, return the eggs or I'll help. So the eggs come back. And then the end of that purport, Prabhupada writes, God helps those who help themselves. So then there's a discussion, how does one get to that position? The Drita Vrata position. And it's a long discussion, it's a very nice class and discussion. I mean, you can hear the sounds of the birds. And do you know that place in New Vrindavan where Prabhupada would sit underneath a persimmon tree, and it's not far from the road. You can hear the trucks passing and stuff like that, and the birds chirping. It's really nice. My mind's eye is picturing Prabhupada sitting at a little table, devotees at his feet. And he was then describing it's by the grace of the spiritual master. One cannot achieve this on one's own, but one can get the instruction, then you follow the instruction. If you don't follow the instruction, then you can't get there. You don't have that submission to Guru, and that the mercy of Krishna comes through Guru, and you stay steadfast to your vow, to the Guru, in the relationship with Guru. That's not a small thing. That was his answer. And then there was all this question, what about weakness? And Prabhupada was really strong about, don't take vows. The process of bhakti is for people who can. And so he just kept sticking to that particular point. There may be other answers at that particular time, for whatever the reasons. Maybe the kirtan under reason, or maybe whatever the reason. He was sticking to that particular point. But it's effort and mercy. There has to be a preliminary, acknowledgement that this material situation is unwanted, and I wish to not continue it. I want to go to the spiritual position. Some preliminary faith like that. And then from preliminary faith, the sequence follows. Sadhu Sangha, Krishna sends, then Bhajana Kriya, and so forth. So that's the how-to. The determination comes from a preliminary desire for being again connected in one's relationship with Krishna, and the nurturing influences of Sadhu Sangha. And its nurturing influences primarily is the sound vibration, hearing and chanting, and hearing and chanting, and serving according to what we hear, and continuing, nurturing that preliminary attraction, adau shraddha. Yes, there's the atmospheres are charged with opposition around us. That's the age of Kali. At the same time, in this age of Kali, it's an opportune time because it's a thoughtful person will understand it's not attractive. And so making the choice for what's attractive is easier because it's so unattractive. But it's a choice. It's a faithful choice in sadhu sangha, and then continuing on with faith that this is in Prabhupada's discussion. This faith will take me to the goal. The process and association with faith will take me to the goal. And one perseveres. And that's determination. And God helps those who help themselves. And Prabhupada explains that phrase. To help yourself is you turn to one who is stronger and take help from one who's stronger. That's helping yourself. And God helps them. And there was some silence, and then very clear Kaladri's voice. But sometimes there's weakness, and Prabhupada jumped on it. What is weakness? So you don't yield to that weakness voice. You go with the effort and mercy voice. That's the Drita Vrata, determination. By sadhu sangha, combined with some faithful desire. There's a higher reality, and I want to be connected to that. There's where strength comes, and determination to become stronger and stronger. Stay in good association, and continue with those good association activities. You'll get there. You have something. Go ahead.
I'm looking for the present moment.
Oh, you're looking for it.
Mm-hmm.
Did it go somewhere?
Mm-hmm. So now that I'm a little bit more experienced, I find myself getting back through, and especially in my chanting. Just as speaking helps me, even so. Other things were pranayam and also healing or aligning my kundalini. Those two I'm really unfamiliar with as far as pranayam and kundalini, but I think they could really help me get me back to the present moment as full as I remember it to be. Are there any other or maybe tips or suggestions to help me align to this present moment?
Sure. Two things, positive and negative. Which one do you want first, the positive or the negative?
Positive.
Okay. In one word, relationship. In one word, relationship. So I want to unpack that one word. You were speaking in the car about your grandfather. Now, from hearing you're speaking about your grandfather, it doesn't take much effort for you to think thoughts of what a good man he was, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, because of the attachment to that person. And even he's not physically present, you may, anyway, I'm just sharing my experience of that little short car ride. You have a lot of feeling. So it's easy for your mind to go to the person. So that's a relationship. What to speak of a Supreme Person? So as one becomes acquainted and then appreciating and then attached to and then further, intensely attached to Krishna, you'll find being in the moment a piece of cake. Or say it the other way. The further you get from that, the more it's an arm wrestling match with the mind. So now here's the negative. Prabhupada didn't speak about pranayama and kundalini. I mean, I know what it is from what he did speak about it, but it's not something he encouraged us to do. In fact, he would kind of minimize it, not speak encouragingly of it, because it's mechanical. And in and of itself, it's not devotional. Now, is there benefit? Sure. It's one of those things that might be said to be indirect as opposed to direct. And the direct has greater effectiveness, greater Shakti. Doesn't mean indirect is you throw it away. But it's not, it doesn't bring you to the essence. The essence is not the moment, because what's on the other side of the moment? It's transcendence. So how do you get to transcendence? Well, you get into the moment, and then you can get into transcendence, right? That's Buddhism.
Get into transcendence automatically is the moment?
No, there's no automatically. I visit China, and so in China, a lot of people say they're Buddhist. They're not really Buddhist, but they say they're Buddhist. Like a lot of people here say they're spiritual. They're not really spiritual. But, that phrase, be in the moment, has a Sanskrit terminology called kshanikvad. Kshana is a Sanskrit term that means a fraction of a moment. There's a moment, and there's a fraction of a moment. And a kshana is a fraction of a moment. And kshanak vada is a doctrine. Vada means doctrine of be in the moment. And that's Buddhism. Buddhism teaches that's all there is. The past and the future don't exist. The only thing that exists is the moment. That's Buddhism. Kshanikvad. So be in the moment, be in the moment, be in the moment, be in the moment, be in the moment. When you become really good at being in the moment, what happens? You can go on the other side of being in the moment. And what's on the other side of being in the moment? If you're Buddhist, nirvana, which it can be called enlightenment, but literally speaking, it means cessation, nirvana, cessation of material existence. So what is that? It's nothing. So back to your question, does being in the moment naturally result in transcendence? No. It can result in nothingness. But there's no such thing as nothingness, because we're something. So what's being in the moment for a Vaishnava or for a transcendentalist? It's to not just be in the moment, be in the moment, be in the moment, but be with Krishna. And that's eternal. It's not negation, it's positive. So that's better than pranayama and kundalini is relationship. That's what's on the other side of the moment. That as you're striving to be in your relationship with Krishna, moments become more important. And the past is not so as important. The future is not as important. It's when you're with a person that you really have love for, your thoughts aren't elsewhere. Just like I mentioned there with Yudhishthira. When he was with Krishna, he lost it. He wasn't in the world anymore. He didn't know where he was and what he was doing. All etiquettes. He was just with Krishna, and it was with Krishna. There was no being in the moment, striving to be in the moment, because of his relationship with Krishna. Now that's an exalted position, but that's if you want to become good at. It's one of the topics I'm going to be speaking about during this weekend. festival of the holy name is mindfulness. Be in the moment, be in the moment, be in the moment, be in the moment. I'm not going to go into the thing with Buddhism. There's nothing wrong with be in the moment with the mantra, be in the moment with Krishna, but it's a relationship. It's more powerful than mechanical, or a method, or a strategy, or a technique, or a physiological. The life air is moving in such a way that they're in balance, and then you can be in the moment better. It's one thing to make wet wood dry, it's another thing to burn the dry wood. That's what's wanted. That's the bhakti principle. It's being in relationship with Krishna at all times. And those devotees who are very attached to Krishna, they're astounding at how they use their time. We read this because it was Bhaktivinoda Thakur, but any great acharya. What they accomplish, how they use time, it's astounding. Worldly people can't understand them. Because Bhaktivinoda Thakur was mixing with officers of the British government. They would sometimes visit him just out of respect, and they would write. They were astonished at how he was immersed. And they're VIP people, and they've never seen anything like it. But it's relationship with Krishna. And it didn't stop. It just kept going and kept going and kept going and kept going. That's transcendence. And it's relationship. And that's our life. That's our process. We still make wet wood into dry wood. That's okay. Indirect is okay. But direct is really the right thing. Something else in the back? Online?
Srida Prabhu. Yes. Dear Guru Maharaj, I am just curious to know what happened in the war after Bhismadeva surrendered to Krishna to get killed when Krishna broke his promise.
The battle continued some days. Not too many more days. I forget how many. There's some number, but not too many more.
Any exchange between Lord and Bhismadeva?
I'm unaware. Anybody here is aware? Further exchange? I'm unaware.
Next is from Radhakund Mataji. She says, my question is, Krishna is all attractive and Bhishmadev knows Krishna is Supreme Lord. When Krishna is in front of him with his all attractiveness, how could he focus on the four-handed Vishnu form and went back to Vaikuntha?
Because that was his nature. That was his natural position, and he saw Krishna according to his natural position. While knowing what he knew, all about Krishna, that was his natural position in relation to Krishna. And that's where his mind went. We had this discussion in Naperville, and I came across a letter that Prabhupada wrote to Tosan Krishna in 1968. I was pretty amazed that Tosan was writing letters to Prabhupada in 1968 about Grandfather Bhishma, and he wanted to know his position, and Prabhupada made it very clear that his worshipable deity, although knowing all about Krishna, his worshipable deity was four-armed Narayana. That was his deity, and that was his destination. He attained Vaikuntha. Although knowing about Krishna and the glories of Krishna's everything. He knew everything. But his affinity, natural attraction, was Krishna, the form of the Lord in Vaikuntha. So that was where his mind went, and that's where he went. Something else? Your voice is not strong and it sounds like the microphone's not on. Is the microphone on? It's on.
Yeah.
Can you speak up?
Yes. In the life of Bhishmadev, in his previous life, he was cursed because he stole the cows of Vashishta.
Yeah.
And now he's this Mahabhagavata devotee. So usually when there is a transformation from material desires to being so attached to Krishna, there is the association of a devotee.
Yes.
So was he already a Mahabhagavata when he stole the cow, or
No. We went through this a little bit with Sri Radhika. There were vasus who were vibhuti expansions of personalities from the spiritual world. Drona, of Drona and Dara, is one. Uddhava was another. There's the eternal associate of Krishna, Uddhava, in the spiritual world. That eternal associate of Krishna, Uddhava, had a expansion, a vibhuti expansion, became a vasu, and then he took birth. Krishna confirms in the third canto as Uddhava from vasu, but we have no indication that Bhishma, being the vasu named Dyo, D-Y-O, was an expansion of someone from the spiritual world. He's just a vasu. Just a vasu. Vasus are important people. But there's no indication that there was something before he was a Mahabhagavata as a vasu. The other vasus were not. He had 7 brothers, and they assisted him in doing something bad, stealing the property of a brahmana. That's really bad. So were they Mahabhagavatas that conspired to steal the property of a brahmana? No. No indication like that. Okay.
And I had another question. So we hear so much that the Lord is always reciprocating with the desires of the devotees.
Yes.
And when we are chanting the holy name, how do we bring the distracted mind to the Lord? Like, what is the propelling desire that devotees can have to bring the attention
This
to the
is his
holy name?
question asked in a different way. It's a different way of asking the same question. And the answer depends upon the stage of one's bhakti. A preliminary is, please accept me, or please engage me in your service. Now, constitutionally, we're servants. So what you're asking for is just, please restore my constitutional position, because I'm distracted by something else that I'm attached to. I'm attached to thinking something else about myself. So please bring me once again into my constitutional position. Please accept me in your service. Although I'm unqualified and I'm, etc., etc. I'm disqualified in so many ways. So the humility and so the answer to your question is that the prayer or the sankalpa or the determination depends upon one stage of bhakti, and it should be realistic according to one's position, and it should be from the heart. That's bhakti. So depending on your position, what's the right way to conduct the mind or direct the mind while chanting? I know that for quite some time now, you've been working on improving your chanting. It's something that's very important to you. So you answer that question better than somebody else because it depends on your position. And a good look at what are your options is look at those who are elevated Vaishnavas and what are they doing, and whether you fit into what they're doing. Did you get that PDF that's some prayers? Did you get a copy? So that's a nice start. It's in the beginning, or somewhere in the middle, or somewhere along the way. You look at prayers of our elevated Vaishnavas and how they pray to the holy name in the process of chanting. That's some indicator. And you find some prayers that you really like, and then you recite those prayers that you really like. I attended a japa retreat that Mother Jamuna attended. It's one of the first times I had the opportunity to personally be in her association. And one of her contributions to that japa retreat is she shared with us some prayers that she recites to her beads before she begins chanting. And it's in that set of prayers. So it's what moves your heart. That's what you do. And stay with it. That's the relationship. Okay, I think we'll end. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Yep.